Yeah. You're starting
With water towers?
And we need a mixture.
Yeah, and it's fine when we started all this discussion.
Some of the visions like.
Mark Fisher was on it. And we did that when I did sit right and I always get back.
It's just like.
I finally said,
Yeah.
okay.
No, Monica.
Yes.
Neither for PG Mark.
How you doing? Well, yourself?
Right.
That's the other thing.
Going on.
Good, how are you?
Goodness.
Improve every step.
It's at the table versus you.
Right. And all, just on the street.
Yeah, Alan, congratulations.
But I'm.
Your cost share.
Yes.
I thought you'd be something I didn't know.
Everyone.
Maybe that too.
Maybe that too, where do you want?
Oh,
Okay. Where don't we know? You know, we still have not been. Are you right?
She's doing July.
Press release. Really? Yeah.
Today.
Not sure what it's called now. Somebody said it's called.
Try and not something out. We certainly.
All of them. Yeah, I was.
I know. That's the garbage. Right. Let's do technology. Got it. Yeah, so that is. Okay. So now we want to make sure we got everything.
And I reached out to the other two.
So, okay, which is good. I'm gonna have to be the deposit.
Yeah, that's right.
Slightly.
Fine, but I think I also get a radio schools like part of this.
Right, right.
All the time now.
Yeah, that's one thing we had to do.
Christmas.
Not just our batch is okay. We
Things are.
Sure.
Yeah, you need to think about that.
Somebody just.
I have, some days I'm.
Start as federal.
And literally the day I talked to them.
That's what bizarre, but true.
It's like,
Okay.
But the problem is that both get money in the cost share for starting. So we had to make sure in addition to the match, we had to have enough money for.
Down there when the hurricane there.
So that we only spend the $10 million of those for construction.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. My son here, they go.
Stip money. Right. Yes. 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 Unless somewhere in it, in that particular form, it says it particularly can't. They have actually added in there that it cannot happen. It cannot because. Federal money for. We were looking at. And there's a part that it cannot be used. Intentionally. Right. So our ARPA money could not have been used. That part of the money could not have been used. For a match with the federal sanctions. But that really would take. I would double check that we did that on the bond. Usually working so good. If you're determined that, and it takes a lot of that, they're mentioned first. They get their money back first. But it does like a little bit. Any cost share. But I bet you are able to go to.
You want me to?
Usually it's not getting positive. Usually it's, if it's federal highway, it's money.
Yeah. Just make sure they have.
Because they're mainly targets are going to.
They should. It's ready. Use it after. Yeah.
That went through.
Okay.
They put it in the chat.
Got you guys.
For us,
Okay, good.
it's been as if it was a GNR.
So far.
It's just a line item on their budget for. but-
Right, so they operated as if it was part of a grant, just like a little grant program for the waterway for revolving loan.
Did you register?
It's operated as if it was a grant.
Yeah, we can keep going whenever
So
you're
we had
ready.
to go through all their stuff.
Hey, guys, let's go ahead and get started. It's 1:30. Welcome to Missouri STP. We will go around and do introductions for those of us in the room. I'm Allison Abel, the Public Works Director for the City of Parkville, Missouri.
Hi, I'm Bryce Shields. I'm with KCHA representing the agency today.
Mickey Aries, City of Peculiar.
Brad Wallace, City Flag City.
DJ Garrett, Platte City.
Mike Duffy, City of Riverside, representing Goods Movement Committee.
Mayra Tuthman, City of Smithville.
Tom Degenhart, City of Oak Grove.
Adam Hilgedick, City of Blue Springs.
Ashley, BHC.
Randy Gordon, BHC. Anthony Sands, Kansas City.
Trent Salisbury, City of Raymore.
Mark Trozen, City of Green Valley.
Mark Cuttle,
Minnesota Regional Council.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Sorry.
Dick
Cuttle, Green Valley.
Thank you. Back here in the corner.
Joe Johnson with Olson.
Mark Stout. Thank you. For those that are online, if you want to just go ahead and put your name and organization in the chat so that we can make sure that we get your attendance. There is an attendance sheet that is making its way around. If you guys could, for those that are in person, go ahead and put your initials next to your name on the sheet. If you're not on the sheet, just go ahead and put your name at the end so that we can make sure we get your attendance and update the sheet for next time. The next item is to approve the November 29th, 2022 meeting summary. So that has been sent out to everyone to review. Are there any comments, suggested changes? Okay, do I have a motion to approve the minutes? Can I get a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Okay, great. Those have been approved. Next on to MoDOT updates. Who's going to lead that discussion?
That would be me, Allison. Okay, I don't have much today. We're working on programming our STP. And we should have an updated presentation in the spring.
Yeah, he's pretty cool. I enjoyed talking to him.
And then also a quick update on the Pell. We're doing our level 3 screening, which is going over and reviewing our recommended concepts. And the last thing is I just urge everybody to keep their projects moving, especially since we're getting ready to get all the new projects. So I highly encourage everybody to do that. So, and that's about all I had for today.
Okay, great. I know that there was at least some information about the governor's cost share that was released. Do you want to talk about that at all? Oh, you're muted.
I know we have a meeting tomorrow, and I'll have more information for you guys during our next meeting.
Okay, yeah, the way we found out about it was through Fox 4 contacted us for comment on our governor's cost share, and I know DJ had a similar experience, so.
I did remember seeing, is that for 92? Yeah. Next time I'll make sure to bring more comments on that, so.
Yeah, MoDOT's another press release is how.
Yeah, and we still haven't gotten like an official notice of, hey, congratulations, but you know, hey, I'll take the money.
Right, yeah, I mean, we have a scheduled meeting tomorrow, so yeah. More information next time.
Well, congratulations to those that were on that list from the press release, and Thank you to MoDOT and all the staff members that worked on the review of those applications. Okay, next is the 2025-26 programming.
Yes. Before I get started, I just want to let everybody know, especially for those in the room, we are operating here in the Mark boardroom with some new technology. You might have noticed a variety of video screens around the room, hopefully make it easier for you to see. Upgraded audio and other things for people on the virtual call, but I would note to people in the room, the microphones are very sensitive and they can hear you kind of while somebody else is talking, and it will pick you up. So just bear that in mind as we're going through in any side conversations that you might be having. People can potentially hear you both in the recording and online. Just a heads up about that. We like to give people that with this new technology. But we generally do this kind of exercise or item with you all following the end of a programming round, and we are thankfully at the end of the programming round for 2025 and 26. It has been a long process, one we started way back talking with the Total Transportation Policy Committee and the Mark Board of Directors about that programming round way back in February. So this has been almost a year process. We're very near the end. There is an agenda item for both TTPC and the Mark Board of Directors to approve an amendment to our transportation improvement program at their January meetings that will incorporate all of your programming recommendations as well as those made by other committees for other funding streams for 2025 and 2026 into the transportation improvement program. So we are very much looking forward to that action being taken in the next step of the process then beginning, which would be approval by both our states and our and US DOT, both Federal Highway Missouri and Kansas, as well as Federal Transit Administration, all still need to kind of take those recommendations and incorporate them into various levels of approval. But we're hopeful to get through that very quickly and be able to get information out to you, get you all started on your projects and get going. Hopefully MoDOT has been working behind the scenes to kind of connect with people on staff there with projects, and you'll have somebody to work with here very soon in terms of getting your projects going. And so we'll take that next step in the process. But for us, the next step in the process is to talk with all of the committees that were involved in the programming process to see kind of your thoughts on how the programming around went, places where we did pretty well, places where maybe some improvement needs to be made, changes to the process, anything that comes to mind. Certainly is on the table. I've kind of thrown a few ideas as conversation starters for you kind of out. Those being typically we see comments about the application form itself. Any of the materials that we provided to you, were they easy to use, comprehensive enough? Was there something you needed that we didn't have for you that you'd like to see in future rounds? Scoring criteria is a big one. We've operated under the same scoring criteria now for a number of programming rounds, and it's probably time to take a bit of a look at that. There is also some desire, especially from myself, to kind of take some of the subjectivity that's in that scoring criteria out and hopefully find ways to incorporate more data-driven criteria into the process. I don't have any specific recommendations about any particular criteria at this point, but it is something we'll probably bring back to you a number of different times talking about scoring criteria. And one of the things we can talk about today is how we want to approach any changes and potential changes to the scoring criteria. The alignment status, how we're determining alignment status, how we're using alignment status, probably more the latter, how that alignment status plays into kind of the work that this particular committee does. There's always a discussion about application limits or caps. We always kind of like to bring that back to you as well. We saw some fairly large applications come through this time, and while those are certainly merit discussion and oftentimes do receive some measure of funding, they do kind of limit the flexibility of the program when the awards get particularly large on projects. Attendance policy, this committee is the only one of the programming committees that does have in place an attendance policy, and we did see kind of some ramifications from that this time around. So that certainly can be on the table for discussion as well. How we presented information to you about projects that had applications in for multiple funding sources, another potential area where we can have some discussion. And then of course, any other items you all want to talk about as far as changes to the programming process or questions you might have or ways we can improve things, we are certainly open to listening to that. And so while myself in particular, from a staff perspective, felt like the round went pretty smoothly. There weren't a lot of hiccups with the application form. There were some that mainly due to us changing kind of the back end of the programming application form a little bit, but we worked through those hiccups and hopefully got everybody submitted and considered where they needed to be. Again, the process was long, but I felt like we got through in a timely manner. We were able to do pre-application presentations in a timely manner and get you off onto your programming discussions without too much trouble. So I felt like it went pretty smoothly, albeit a little longer than I would have liked for it to have been. And I'm sure most of you would probably share that kind of assessment as well. But happy to open the floor up for any questions, concerns, any issues you want to discuss about the programming around and how we move forward from here.
What do you guys have? This is your time. I know, what was it, 2 funding rounds ago, we had a small committee that got together and reviewed the process for doing just this, reviewing all that. And that's when we made some of those changes. So now is a really good time for us to get some of that stuff out on the table so that we can have that discussion and decide how to move forward. So with that, what do you guys want? What do you want to talk about?
Well, I'm glad, Mark, that you mentioned about looking at the criteria and the categories, because I think as small communities, we've talked before, there are simply some categories and criteria on points that we will never qualify for. And so when we talk about the total points and trying to get funding, we simply will never get enough points in order to get funding levels and some to get the projects that we need funded. So looking at what you are talking about, the narrative of the project, the desire for the project, we talked about having support letters provided, and we had a lot of support driven on our project, but we didn't think that we got any kind of recognition in regards to the support letters that we had from our school districts, from our fire districts in regards to that project was recognized, or any points given in regards to the worth of the project. So when you talked about in your opening comment about looking at not just the points, but looking at the worth of the project from the value of the project, I'm very open to looking at how we look at the categories and the criteria and re-examine those again.
What else do you guys have? George?
Kind of to Mark's point, talking about the being a little less subjective on these and maybe a little more data. One of the things I think would be helpful would be help up front on selecting the project category, because I know sometimes agencies can go through and they can score it in one category, score it in another category, and see which one gets the best points. But I think if maybe there's some guidance up front to say this is truly, a capacity project or a livable streets or things of that nature, that may help up front, because going into it, it's sometimes kind of a blind guess of saying, well, gee, what's really a good category for this project or where it should fit. And I don't know if that needs to, how rigid that needs to be on the first submission, but I think at least maybe some guidance or help in selecting that category. And I think that would help in the selection process of ensuring we get, good projects in each of the categories.
Okay. Matt, I saw your face pop up there. Did you have something to say?
I was going to second the comments about the pieces and parts that smaller communities cannot just flat qualify for points on. It's very difficult for communities like ours to connect to some of the things that you get points for in the Kansas City metro down closer to the city. So that's all I was gonna do, second the comments from earlier, so.
I'll third that as well, since I'm a small community too.
We have 9 different categories on here. And all the categories, it looks like, got funding except bridge replacement. I know we had that discussion earlier that it's hard for bridge replacement as one to score the points to score high enough to ever get there. So I don't know how we, if we're gonna have a category, but it's never gonna get funded, is it worth it to have the category, or should we at least have some amount that always goes to that category or each category?
Yeah, that's
Didn't the Bel Air project?
Yeah, there was one bridge project that was funded in the city of Glen Air.
But we pulled way down to get that and basically went away from scoring everything just to say, let's make sure some small community gets it.
Well, and make sure.
Well, as far as the bridge category itself, if you funded the highest rated bridge, it would have been another Kansas City project, because ours was like a 69 or 70. So
Correct.
it's kind of a little bit of both.
This is your time.
Sorry, if MoDOT's going to continue their BRO funding change they did this year, there's quite a bit of opportunity out there for bridges to score on that project.
Yes, we're still doing that. We're out to, we have 5 years. So, because we have the BRO funds and we have the BFT funds that we're using. So. And I will be doing the next round this summer. So we'll have another bridge round coming up here pretty soon.
Stephanie?
Yeah, so one of the things that would have helped me as a newcomer, and I think other agencies too, is to, if it's possible, to have a list of previously funded projects, the agencies that were funded and the amounts that were funded and the projects. Just having that list and seeing past items would have been beneficial for me, being a newcomer to the state and to this whole process. But I think that might help also just look at previous projects and funding. I don't know. And I think I had asked about that in one of our previous meetings when we were talking about that, asking if that was ever considered, and they said yes, but then we never, I never saw anything of any past funding. So that would just be one of my suggestions. If there's a way to get a document that has past funding, past the agencies that were funded and the amounts and the projects that were funded, that might be nice.
I think in the last round of funding, whenever we went through this, there was a spreadsheet that was put together by jurisdiction and how much over the last 10 years each of those jurisdictions had gotten. So, maybe that's something we can look at doing in the future, so that we can not only look at that funding round for regional equity, but maybe look at the past 10 years or however far back we want to go.
Sure, I would note some of that is available, and we do cover it, and we'll cover it again today when we do reasonable progress. And it's more limited, I suppose, in some respects. But today you'll see 2023, 2024, 2025, and 2026. That covers a pretty good amount of, but certainly we can do a better job of putting together some funding history and getting that out to folks.
Awesome. Thanks.
Also, just real quickly on the scoring criteria of the issue of subjectivity versus objectivity. I think one of the things, first of all, I think it would be useful to look at it again, just because it's been a while. If we get too carried away with objectivity, that will actually can hurt small cities more, because that tends to be drugged into engineering data, engineering information, and that becomes more and more difficult. So that we have to be careful that if we go in that direction, we do it in a way that does not further disadvantage small communities, because a lot of that means, a lot of objective data means investment in upfront cost. But one of the things I would throw out that I think is would be useful is, because, as you said, the amount of worth that communities and small communities put into projects. An objective thing would be, looking at kind of the the value of the community's contribution compared to its available resources, its general fund. And you can start to see where some of these communities are willing to put in significant percentages of their general fund, of their annual general fund to a project. That tells you something about how important it is to that community. And that is something that can be looked at objectively to give you a little bit of how much are they contributing, how much value do that we place on it. And I think that would help some of our smaller communities.
How much skin do they have in the game?
How much skin do they have in the game? Because it translates into value, and it also translates into level of effort in a way that has some objectivity to it.
Are you talking about assigning points to that or?
Well, I'm just throwing that out as when we look at, if we're going to look at criteria, I think we should look at making sure that we don't, if we don't get so objective that we drive it towards meeting investment. But if we are going to be objective about some of these things, we include that kind of level of effort, at least consider that as part of our review.
Well, I certainly want to make sure that we support small communities, but I don't want to at the same time say, well, Kansas City would have to submit a $400 million project for it to be equal to a percentage of yours, which, you know, we'd never submit that because it's not a good pot of money.
There's objective criteria right now that benefit larger communities at the expense of smaller communities. Having some of those objective criteria that go the other way, to me, is not going to be that. Kansas City has really good projects. You're always going to score well. So I don't think this is a make or break, but I think there's something that should be considered going forward. We have to acknowledge that some of those criteria that exist now are simply not very beneficial to small communities, and they are overly beneficial to large communities. In fact, it's nothing, that's not a value judgment. It is an actual fact. So if we're looking at objective criteria, it does not hurt to have ones that look at what communities' value do they put on them, and what. That's just a comment. It's not a fiat of, hey, I'm not going to be here when you make these decisions. I just think it should be factored into the next review of scoring criteria.
What else do you guys have?
Sorry.
One of the items that I see on the list is projects applying for multiple funding sources and jurisdictions applying for multiple projects and that kind of thing. Is there any discussion about either one of those? Don't everybody talk at one time. Okay, Sherry, you're first on the list.
Well, I'm gonna go back to the previous comment, because I'm still trying to get my head around how, you know, how specifically, I mean, we're just gonna do comments today and then come back and dive into this deeper for future meetings, or how's, you know, I mean, I understand what we're trying to say for, you know, smaller communities and we don't compete because no, we don't have the traffic volumes. We don't have, you know, some of the other things, but I mean, these are criterias that we have as a 2050 plan have put in place that we want to emphasize redevelopment. We want to recognize economic justice locations, which, and you get further out into our smaller communities and our suburbs, and we don't, it really isn't very applicable to us. So I can sit here and say it doesn't work very well, but again, what do we want for our values? And how does our scoring match up to our values? As far as engineering and finding the data to fill out the application, the data on Mark's website is all there. It's just time it takes to find it. But it's there for everybody, whether you're a small community or a large community. That data for filling out these applications, for the most part, is already there available to us to use, regardless of our size. I think that there's things that we should evaluate. You know, we get too many categories, then we dilute other ones. You can go back and look at what happened at CMAQ and how they got theirs so percentaged out and they couldn't even meet their goals on certain categories. So that to me, that's something that's broken, but we don't live in the CMAQ world for the most part, so I'm not going to go there. But as we start putting down parameters, we got to consider what we're saying and what we're doing. And if that's what the committee wants to do, I fully support our decision as a whole and consensus.
Okay, Matt, I saw you pop your head up too. Did you have something to add?
Yeah, I was looking for a document. I just know going back to what you were just saying, there are pieces and parts of that application that Liberty's going to be able to qualify for that the city of Lawson or Kearney or Smithville, some of the further out cities just aren't going to be able to do. I mean, it just doesn't matter what we do. It really truly is. And I don't care if it's the 2050 plan or not. I'm going to be brutally honest. I don't like the 2050 plan. I think the 2050 plan is detrimental to small communities on the outlying parts of the city. So I know that's part of our guiding, whatever you want to call it, but there's pieces and parts that we're never going to qualify for. We're never going to get points on. And if it was something in there to help trade off points with bigger communities, because it balanced it out like DJ was suggesting, I think that's a great idea. I mean, there are values to projects. We were going to put in 20% on our project, which on a $1.5 million project, that's a pretty good chunk. I mean, my budget's less than $2 million a year. So it just balances to me. But I don't know the answer, but there's got to be a better way to look at these applications.
Oh, Patty, did you have something to say?
Yeah, so trying to look at that objectively, and I'll go back to Sherry's comment about CMAQ. We have had, and I don't, Mark, you'll have to tell me where it is. In the past, we have had a points available for not over programming, but rather than asking the full 80% that's allowable, you get points for overmatching. So you're required to do 20, but if you overmatch by committing more money from your local fund, general fund, any non-federal fund, there's extra points for that. I think that that's beneficial to the region as a whole, because it would mean if the local jurisdictions are putting more toward their project, then there's more money to go around to get to more agencies. But it's applicable to both small and large cities. Yes, I have a huge budget, but trust me, there's no money anywhere. I'm looking just like everybody else. And yes, our projects are going to score well because we only send the projects that are going to score well, that meet the goals in 2050. I have another 100 projects that score 20 points and 25 points because they're not in the urban core and they're not near a partner agency and they're, they don't carry a lot of traffic. So I'm never going to get those funded, whether that's city or the federal funds. But I think if we want to talk about points for percentage of overmatch, maybe that's a possibility that would offer points, but it wouldn't just be based on the size of the jurisdiction, but to anybody, and then it's a benefit to the whole region.
Anyone else?
I'll pop back in. I guess that brings up the question, then what's the value for communities like us to even be here? Plain and simple. Like I said in the meeting when we did the funding, we don't ever ask for money for projects. This is the first time we've ever asked for money. I don't have staff or engineers or paying someone else to do the application for me like a lot of communities do. It's not an option for me. So I'm not going to be able to score no matter what I do. I mean, I've studied this, all the requirements. I've been involved. I've been here at the meetings. Hell, there's bigger cities that didn't get to vote than we did because I was involved. I mean, I know the game. I tried to play the game, but what's the true value for small and ultra small communities then?
And that's those are good points, and I don't want to, but I think part of this today is talking about, do we think it's time to maybe review the scoring criteria? And if so, what's the process to do it? And I think what I'm hearing is there's a lot of interest in looking at those scoring criteria. So now we look at, all right, how do we move forward in doing that? And then because otherwise, I think Sherry made the point of, and I apologize for getting too detailed. I was using that as an example, not as not as a prescription. But I think the point is, I think there's pretty good consensus that we'd like to look at the scoring criteria. Does that seem correct?
Everybody
Yes.
agree with that?
Yes. So now I think maybe we start to look for how do we do that?
Okay, so we've got 2 years before the next funding rounds. We typically start that, what, 9 months before with the submitting of everything. So we basically need to start, if we're gonna make any changes, we need to start reviewing those now.
Correct. I would note, there is another committee that utilizes the same scoring criteria, your counterparts in Kansas. They will meet kind of the Thursday following your February meeting. So I think that's February 16th, I believe, or potentially even February 9th. They may be a little bit heavy. I'm not sure on the date of that meeting. But I'm guessing they'll be interested in looking at scoring criteria from that committee as well. As in years past, when we look at scoring criterias that affect multiple committees, generally, we tend to put together a work group that is comprised of folks from both of those committees to kind of get together and work through things and provide direction to staff and how they issues they want researched and brought back for their consideration, and then it will go to the full group. You do have quite a bit of time. However, I would note if there are significant changes made into what we're asking in terms of the application, that may require a little bit more time in order for us to be able to reprogram the application form to get that out to you. But I feel pretty good that we have some time before that. So if we get to work on it here pretty quickly, we should be in good shape. So we are certainly happy to work on setting up that work group. We will discuss scoring criteria with your Kansas counterparts and move forward with establishment of a work group likely following their February meeting. However, if you are interested in participating on that work group, please kind of let us know and we'll go from there. So.
Okay, so reach out to Mark if you're interested in participating in that committee. We'll find out if there's any interest from the Kansas side and hopefully have an update for the next meeting.
Depending on when the Kansas meeting is.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay, we'll have an update in the future meeting.
absolutely. And we may reach out to them prior to their meeting just to gauge their interest in terms of putting together a work group or not.
I think with enough discussion that we've had here, I think that it's at least worth looking into.
Sure.
Okay, so anything else on the 2025-26 programming before we move on?
Yeah, Allison, this is George Minger. I wanted to address your question. You'd asked about thoughts on applying for multiple projects, different funds, and I don't know that I'd want to restrict that because I think that kind of gets back into giving communities an opportunity to, the best chance of getting a project, whether you're applying for TAPS, CMAQ, or STP. Now, I think that's when we get into the conversation of, should a project be awarded funds from two different sources? I think that's, I think that's a conversation to have when we're, after the scoring's done, because I don't think, we see what's on the table, because I know typically we don't do that. We've tried to have one category, but I think allowing communities to submit multiple applications or in multiple categories, I think there's some chance of that. But then if we're able to go through this guidance and criteria up front to kind of help communities focus their efforts on projects and score better depending on the categories and where they submit, maybe that's something that could be helpful.
Okay, thank you. Okay, next on the agenda is the CRISA discussion with the maintenance project. Randy, are you going to lead that discussion?
I think I'm going to lead this and hopefully have some gaps filled in by our friends from BHC that are in the room with us, as well as Ron, if he has any places where I'm not hitting the mark on what's going on with this regional preventive maintenance project. But we are nearing kind of the time where we need to start finalizing kind of lists of routes and other things in order to get the bid packages prepared for the most advantageous times to bid those projects out. And so we thought it would be a good time to check in with you all and make sure everybody is on the same page about a variety of different topics and kind of give you some heads up on timelines that we're now starting to work with. We did send out a document to you yesterday that kind of gives you a status report. There have been some changes to that, so bear with us a little bit on that, but we'll go over kind of the intent of that particular document here in just a second. So kind of just a few guidelines we wanted to go over with you just to make sure that you understand everything in terms of the program before we get too much further into this. So most of you are aware that any improvements beyond what the allocation was for your particular jurisdiction, whether that be because you've had more square footage you want to do, you want to add routes kind of over and above, or those are your responsibilities. So anything beyond the federal funds for your particular jurisdiction are your responsibility. Generally, we are looking to have those funds in hand prior to starting your improvement to ensure kind of contractor work continuity. We will provide an invoice for any additional work that goes on there. And any delay in providing those funds or getting your funds submitted may push your work to the 2024 work schedule. So just that's kind of upfront. Number one, I'm pretty sure everybody is aware of those particular things. I'm sure you're all also aware that costs are pretty volatile at this point. And so the estimates and costs may change once those bids are received, which may impact kind of the routes and may kind of change the mileage available to the jurisdiction. Again, should be pretty well known to all of you, probably more so than myself. We've had some questions about striping. If there are minimal or no alterations to the current striping, it's included in your estimate. Any striping going beyond what currently exists may increase the estimate for that particular route and cut into kind of the square footage that you're able to do. And if striping raises the cost beyond what is available, again, that additional cost is borne by you as the jurisdiction. So a couple of questions. Well, here we'll go quickly through this. You all have this. If your difference is in red, that means you have identified more square footage of improvements than your allocation. And we will need to kind of confirm with you whether or not you're willing to pay the difference there in order to move forward, or if you need to kind of revise the routes that you have submitted to get back closer or even under your allotted amount. And so there are a number of different jurisdictions there. Some of you are in the opposite direction and not have had enough routes identified in order to exhaust your current allotment. I would hazard a guess if you're fairly close to the allotment, it may be a pretty good place to be, as it may provide you some insurance against rising costs or inflationary things going on there. So this is all this just to say we have an estimate of about $7 million in terms of the routes that have been identified in a total regional allotment of just over $6.7 million. So we're a little over. You can see it by jurisdiction there. If you are if you are under your allotted amount and are interested in adding routes, there is still time to do so. BHC has graciously offered to kind of set up a time next week, and we'll work with BHC to get that information out as soon as we possibly can about a date for that, where you can work with BHC to make sure you get your routes input in and can see exactly where you are. So that will be happening at some point next week, and we'll get that information out to you as soon as we possibly can. So there is still opportunity. I think we're looking to have all of this finalized here pretty soon. So let me move to the next page here. So one of the questions we had was, does the existing agreement that you all have entered into with Mark for these funds, are any of you concerned that this agreement doesn't cover any additional local dollars that you will need, or are we feeling pretty comfortable there, or will other agreements be needed? BHC and Mark are looking for confirmation of the routes by January 20th, which again is why we're going to open up another day to get you all submitted and taken care of. And then any questions from the committee regarding any of this information that we've gone through here pretty quickly. So and I'll stop there and answer any questions or try to answer them.
So once we have real numbers, this project's bid, will we be able to adjust our routes then? Rather than trying to come up with local dollars?
I believe that is.
You would then remove a portion of a segment or something.
Well, I mean, because a lot of these are intersection to intersection. I think my criteria was, well, I'm going to go as far as my money allows. If I'm, 50 feet short of an intersection, so be it, draw the line. Let me just use my mark money.
Certainly doable, and now's the time to decide, so we can put the language in the bid docs, so you're covered, the contractor can't right, come back and claim a change order, price adjustment within 10% or something. We'll verify that with Mark staff at MoDOT just to make sure, right, we don't somehow break the rules with that, but yeah, I think that's reasonable.
When we get bids, will that lock in the price with, you mentioned the volatility of oil and pricing, will we be at a bid price or are there any indexing within that?
I guess you have the option, but I think the assumption was no, there's no indexing. That'll be the price for 2023 work.
Okay.
Patty, go ahead.
Yeah, so on the list, I was just kind of looking at estimates, and Kansas City and Independence have almost the same amount of square feet, but ours is 2.5 times theirs. As far as estimate goes, am I missing something? Are we doing a completely different mix or?
I don't think we're using different mixes in terms of price estimating. We'll just have to look to see what in fact was officially submitted versus the calculated price. In case you know. Okay.
Chad, go ahead.
Yeah, and I was talking to Garrett Ross, and he said he's done 2 rounds of projects, but he hasn't got a lot of feedback. Is that something, Randy, that you could get with Garrett Ross to make sure that we're maximizing our funds too?
Yeah, and I actually got an email from him late morning asking kind of on these lines, so we will follow up with confirmation for him. Which I'll verify per Patty's question that in fact what we're presenting here meets what we received from city staff in terms of your desired segments.
Yeah, because it looked like we had a significant amount of money still available. And I know he said he did 2 different rounds of projects. So if you could just follow up, that'd be great.
Yeah, he was quite shocked that their number, what they didn't have red for over programmed. So yes, we will verify that, Chad.
Yeah, and I'm kind of shocked that I'm over programmed 2 times. Whenever I worked with Dave, he said, yeah, this is what we're looking for, a roadway that's about this length or whatever. So I gave him one that was exactly that length. But yeah, we're double that. So can we confirm what our route is?
Certainly. And just so for the committee, Dave is no longer with BHC, so that's why I'm here instead of Dave today. So yeah, any concerns you have, just feel free to reach out to me, to Ashley, via Mark or Carol. He's returned. So yeah, we want to make sure we get this dialed in nice and tight.
And are you using just a standard dollar per square foot for everybody, or different per county or anything, or?
No, I think, yeah, we use standard unit pricing for the treatments.
Okay, then there's something hinky then between Kansas City and Independence versus everybody else.
Kansas City is listed as a mill and overlay, and most of Independent selections are micro servicing.
Okay, so it's the treatment. So we didn't just do square foot of improvements, we did type of treatment as well.
So we can go ahead and cut our program back to this new estimate on the square foot.
Now's the time to do it.
Well, that's what we're gonna do. Because it's quite a bit different than the price we had when we started.
Okay.
So I just wanted to know. I hate to cut the program back to that point and then leave money on the table, which was the idea, is to make sure we don't leave money on the table.
Right.
Sure.
Yeah, we spent a lot of time making sure that we went into that the software to get it right on the mark.
Put some phases in there that if the money was available, we would do these phases. As opposed to not doing things and then giving a bunch of money back.
Right. Yeah, obviously that from the get-go, the whole purpose was to utilize every dollar available for the cities. So that's certainly the way we want the process to be.
Well, it sounds like we've got time between now and next Friday to kind of sort through some of these issues. Reach out to Randy, reach out to Ashley. If you've got any questions about your dollar amount, maybe you said you'd set up a time for people if they wanted to come to your office to maybe sort through some of this stuff directly
Or Zoom, we'll
or
do
Zoom?
however you prefer.
Okay.
But yeah, we'll, Ashley and I'll get back to Mark no later than tomorrow morning with kind of when we will be available for any and all conversations, just to make sure we get this again programmed as well as we can before we go out to bid.
Sherry's got a question.
Oh, Sherry, yes.
Yeah, can you make sure for the City of Liberty, you reach out to Josh Martinez? He's been working with you guys and because, yeah, there's some roads that you guys missed on ours.
Yeah, we did. I got 2 emails from Josh this morning.
Yeah.
About which segments are included. I think they got cleared by MoDOT right before the holidays, and I think they may be updated now, but what was sent yesterday did not include those quantities. You're right, Sherry. So we're making sure we get those shown as a go for the bid package.
Okay. Anything else? Doug, did you have something? Okay.
Quick question. This is Stephanie. Who are we emailing with concerns? Because ours is way over and I just want to confirm the location and the treatment.
Randy Gordon with BHC.
And we'll put contact info in the email we sent to Mark to
Okay,
distribute.
we'll send out that contact information along with the window of time.
Yep.
That they're gonna dedicate to this project for you guys.
All right, great, thank you.
Okay. Anything else on this? Moving on to reasonable progress.
All right, so a reasonable progress. We ended, most of you are aware of this number because we talked about this as we were working through our programming, but we ended 2022 with a balance of $14.8 million. So not approaching numbers high as what I've seen in my time working with this committee. I can remember back time 2005 or so where we were at $63 million as balance. So, but certainly 14.8 is a growing number and one that MoDOT central office is kind of starting to take a notice of local public agency program around the state, not just in Kansas City, but pretty much all around the state of leaving, starting to have growing balances, which are causing some issues for the state in terms of the state being able to exhaust all of the funding allocations that have been provided in a given fiscal year, and even impacts their ability to go after kind of funding through the August redistributions that happen every year. And so we saw a lower number of funds coming into the state than in previous years because some of the balances are starting to get larger than what we had been seeing in previous years. So MoDOT central office certainly is encouraging us to find ways to expend dollars down and get our balances down. It helps not only the region start to see the benefit of all of these projects, but also helps the state in terms of bringing additional resources into the program. But you can see we ended at 14.8 million. We have new funds of about 23.7 for 2023. We have a total available of just over $38.5 million, which is considerable. If everything we have programmed for 2023 found its way out the door this year, we would spend 31.6. So we would still leave a balance, but we would cut it pretty much in half, which would be a great thing. However, we know most years, all of the projects don't obligate on time. And so if you have projects in upcoming years in 24, 25, or 26 that you believe can be ready sooner, please do let us know and we will work with you to kind of make sure that those projects are ready to go. We'll work with MoDOT, and if they are in fact ready to go sooner, we can get you moved up into the program and start utilizing the dollars available to the region sooner. I would note here one project highlighted on your screens here, Kansas City, Missouri's Wacomas Complete Streets Upgrade Project has been obligated and is out to bid at this point, as far as I know. That project is important. Not only does it expend $2.3 million worth of STP funds for us, but it also had an allocation of highway infrastructure program funds that came through omnibus funding bills in previous years. It did utilize the remaining increment of highway infrastructure program funds that the region had available. So We have exhausted those funds within the time frame allocated, so great job there in getting those dollars kind of utilized and out the door. But you can see quite a few projects on the list there in kind of a wide range of jurisdictions all over the region with projects here for 2023. We do only have one CMAQ traffic flow project for 2023, which is Mark's Operation Greenlight ATMS software project. So that one is on the list at $354,000. It also has STBG funds on it, which completes the funding package for that particular project. Now, moving on for 2024, you can see we have about $21.3 million programmed. This would be lower than the allocation we would anticipate in 2024. Again, none of this is new or changed information. This is also kind of this snowballing effect is kind of why we programmed a much higher amount for our 25 and 26 funds so that we would catch up and expend the dollars down that way. So for 2025, you can see those on the list. I should note for 25 and 26, I used and I sent out kind of draft tip records to everybody. So you all should have already seen the years in which your projects were kind of placed for funding, but we followed the application as best as we could. I think in most cases, we gave everybody, if you requested 25 or 26 as a discrete year, we were able to provide you with that particular schedule. If you gave us the option by saying 25 or 26, we were able to kind of move your projects around in order to make the program work a little bit. So we'll have about $28.8 million for 2025, which will be higher than our allocation. And then in 2026, we have about $35.3 million programmed. Again, much higher than our allocations. It should catch us up and exhaust kind of all of the allocated dollars that would be coming to the region through 2026. So that is where we are in terms of our STBG and CMAQ programming. I should note CMAQ is not quite as in kind of building a balance mode as STBG. The other one that is building a considerable balance is our Transportation Alternatives Program. Most of you who've been aware of that committee and that funding source are well aware of that, and we are now starting to see some movement on older projects that are starting to kind of chip away at that balance. So, but anything anyone can do to kind of get projects sooner, we would happily entertain the ability to move projects forward. I would note KCATA is one we typically are able to maneuver around a little bit because those are transferred to Federal Transit Administration. And once that transfer request is made, those funds are considered obligated by Federal Highways. So, if there's interest from ATA, I think you have one in 2025. If there's interest in moving that project forward, certainly we are open to working with you to get that done. That's all I had on reasonable progress. I'm happy to take any questions anyone has.
Any questions? Okay, any other business? I, of course, always have announcements. So APWA is going to have their regional Mid-America Conference. That's going to be held May 22nd through 24th. It's going to be here in Kansas City. This happens every 3 years. So if you guys have public works employees, this is open to consultants. Anybody and everybody should come to this. It's great training. You get PDHs. We'll have an exhibit floor with all kinds of great toys and equipment for anybody, software demonstrations, that kind of thing. So that's going to be May 22nd through 24th. That's going to be held at the Overland Park Convention Center. So look out for more information on that. This is a great training, networking, all the things event. WTS, Women in Transportation, has a couple of programs coming up. They have Ethics Jeopardy coming up on January 25th. They have a professional development speaker coming in on February 22nd. And then on March 28th, we're going to do a meet and greet with Lori Luther, who's the new city manager for the city of Overland Park. You guys could get to meet her in an informal type setting. If you guys are interested in any of those programs, feel free to reach out to me or go out to APWA or WTS's website. Are there any other announcements or any other business for this board?
Oh, also, this is Marcella. I did some looking on the governor's cost share, and it looks like we have 6 cities that got funding. City of Raymore, Harrisonville, Platte City, Parkville, Independence, and well, only 5, sorry. And of course, Harrisonville, but we only got 5, and the cities that received the funding will get a congrats letter and also the LPA contact that would be working with them. So congratulations to the cities.
Congratulations. Thank you for that update.
I would add to that, once these are more known, you'll expect to hear from us. We'll be working with you all to get those projects programmed into the tip so you can not incur any unnecessary delays, but we'll make sure to work with MoDOT on the timing of that as well.
Well, with that, our next meeting is going to be on Tuesday, February 14th, 1:30 here in this room or out there virtually. So with that, let's adjourn. Motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Okay, second? Okay, anybody opposed? Okay, let's go. Thank you.